Sword Art Online had one of the greatest premises in anime history, and it completely squandered it. A death game where every decision could mean life or death should have been packed with tension, strategy, unpredictable characters, and real consequences. Instead, I got an overpowered protagonist who rarely feels like he's in danger, a growing collection of love interests orbiting around him, and a story that constantly sacrifices its own stakes whenever it wants another Kirito is awesome moment. Then I watched Killing Bites. It wasn't trying to reinvent anime. It wasn't pretending to be some profound philosophical masterpiece. It just focused on telling an exciting story with dangerous fights, flawed characters, real consequences, and villains who actually felt threatening. Every battle had me wondering who was going to walk away alive, because the series wasn't afraid to let its characters fail. That's something I never felt while watching Sword Art Online. The funny part is that Killing Bites fixes so many of the problems I've had with Sword Art Online without even trying. Its characters have personalities beyond looking cool. Its fights have actual suspense because victory isn't guaranteed. The world doesn't revolve around one invincible protagonist, and when something bad happens, it actually feels like it matters. Instead of bending over backward to make its main character look like the greatest person who's ever lived, it lets the story earn its biggest moments. That's why Killing Bites is everything I wanted Sword Art Online to be. It takes many of the same ingredients: action, high-stakes conflict, memorable characters, and larger-than-life battles, and turns them into something I found far more entertaining. So today, I'm going to explain why Killing Bites fixed everything I hate about Sword Art Online, and why I think it's one of the most underrated action anime out there. If you've never heard of Killing Bites, the premise is surprisingly simple. The series takes place in a world where powerful corporations secretly settle their disputes through underground death matches instead of boardroom meetings. Rather than hiring ordinary fighters, they use genetically engineered human-animal hybrids. Each fighter inherits the instincts, abilities, and physical traits of a specific animal, turning every battle into a brutal clash of different hunting styles and survival instincts. Some fighters rely on overwhelming strength, while others specialize in speed, venom, camouflage, regeneration, or razor-sharp claws and teeth. Because every competitor has a unique set of abilities inspired by real animals, the fights are much more than two people punching each other until someone falls over. Winning often comes down to understanding your opponent's strengths, exploiting their weaknesses, and adapting in the middle of combat. What I like most is that the series establishes its premise almost immediately and sticks to it. It knows exactly what it wants to be: a violent, over-the-top tournament anime where every fight has high stakes and every competitor feels dangerous. It doesn't waste time pretending to be something else. It embraces its ridiculous concept, commits to it completely, and becomes far more entertaining because of that. What really surprised me is just how many things Killing Bites gets right that Sword Art Online gets wrong. Every time I found myself praising something in Killing Bites, I realized it was because I'd been disappointed by the way Sword Art Online handled a similar idea. It's almost like the two series took opposite approaches to storytelling. When Killing Bites wants a fight to feel exciting, it creates uncertainty. You genuinely don't know who's going to win because the characters are vulnerable. Every opponent is dangerous, and mistakes have real consequences. Sword Art Online, on the other hand, often removes that tension because I already expect Kirito to come out on top. If you already know the destination, the journey becomes a lot less exciting. The characters are another huge difference. Killing Bites lets its cast have distinct personalities, conflicting motivations, and meaningful flaws. They're not defined by how much they admire the protagonist. They have their own goals, make their own decisions, and sometimes those decisions have brutal consequences. By comparison, Sword Art Online too often feels like the entire world exists to remind you how incredible Kirito is. Instead of characters driving the story, it often feels like the story bends itself around one character. Even the action feels more engaging. Every ability in Killing Bites has clear strengths and weaknesses, so fights become strategic instead of feeling like contests over who can pull out the next convenient power-up. Watching two fighters exploit each other's weaknesses is far more interesting to me than watching a protagonist suddenly become stronger because the plot needs him to. That's ultimately why Killing Bites impressed me so much. It commits to its premise, respects its own rules, lets its characters struggle, and actually earns its biggest moments. Sword Art Online had an incredible concept and all the potential in the world, but for me, it rarely lived up to it. Killing Bites isn't trying to be the next big philosophical masterpiece, it just tells an exciting story well. Ironically, by focusing on doing the basics right, it ended up giving me much more of what I wanted from Sword Art Online than Sword Art Online itself ever did. The funniest part is that Killing Bites isn't even trying to be some groundbreaking masterpiece. It simply understands what kind of anime it wants to be and executes that idea with confidence. Meanwhile, Sword Art Online had one of the coolest premises in anime, a death game where losing means dying in real life, and somehow turned it into an overpowered wish fulfillment fantasy with increasingly predictable outcomes. For me, the choice isn't even close. If I had to rewatch one of these series tomorrow, I'd pick Killing Bites without thinking twice. It gave me everything I wanted from an action anime. Memorable characters, intense battles, genuine suspense, and a story that was actually entertaining from beginning to end. That's why Killing Bites is the better anime by a mile. We need more anime like Killing Bites and a lot less anime like Sword Art Online. I'd much rather see studios take chances on series that have flawed but interesting characters, genuine tension, and stories that aren't afraid to let actions have consequences. Killing Bites may not be perfect, but at least it knows what it wants to be and commits to it. It delivers exciting fights, memorable characters, and real suspense instead of constantly reminding the audience how unstoppable the main character is. Meanwhile, Sword Art Online has received season after season, movie after movie, and endless opportunities to keep telling its story. Personally, I don't think it's earned nearly as many chances as it's been given. For me, it's frustrating to watch a franchise I don't enjoy continue getting new content while series like Killing Bites are left behind after a single season. Seriously, where's season 2? If there was ever an anime that deserved another shot, I'd argue it's Killing Bites. There's still more story to tell, more characters to develop, and more brutal strategic fights waiting to be adapted. I'd be far more excited for another season of Killing Bites than yet another Sword Art Online project. At the end of the day, that's my biggest takeaway. I want more action anime that trust their audience, embrace their own identity, and focus on telling an entertaining story instead of revolving everything around an invincible wish fulfillment protagonist. In my opinion, Killing Bites is exactly the kind of series that deserves more attention. While Sword Art Online has already had more than enough opportunities to prove itself, for me, the characters in Killing Bites are far more interesting than the cast of Sword Art Online. They actually feel like individuals with their own personalities, motivations, and agendas instead of existing to revolve around a single protagonist. Even when I don't agree with their choices, I can understand why they're making them, and that makes them much more engaging to watch. One of the biggest differences is that the characters in Killing Bites don't feel protected by the story. They can lose, they can make mistakes, and they can pay the price for those mistakes. That uncertainty makes every interaction and every fight more exciting because it feels like anyone could come out on top. The series trusts its cast to carry the story instead of relying on one person to solve every problem. By comparison, I found Sword Art Online's cast much less compelling. Too often, interesting characters are introduced with their own goals and personalities, only to end up taking a backseat once Kirito enters the picture. Instead of continuing to grow on their own, many of them eventually feel like they're there to support, admire, or reinforce how exceptional the protagonist is. That made the world feel smaller instead of larger. What I appreciate about Killing Bites is that its characters feel like they're competing against each other rather than existing for each other. Everyone has something to gain, something to lose, and their own reasons for fighting. That creates conflict that feels natural instead of manufactured, and it keeps me invested because I'm interested in more than just one person. To me, that's what separates the two series. Killing Bites builds a cast of memorable fighters who all contribute to the story, while Sword Art Online often feels like it's asking every other character to stand in Kirito's shadow. That's why I found the characters in Killing Bites so much more entertaining from beginning to end. The action in Killing Bites is also far more exciting, and to me it feels much more grounded despite the over-the-top premise. Yes, the characters are genetically engineered human-animal hybrids, but the fights still have a sense of weight and physicality. Every punch, slash, and bite looks like it hurts. The combat feels raw, brutal, and desperate instead of feeling like a flashy light show. What really sells the action is that every fighter has clear strengths and weaknesses based on the animal they're modeled after. Winning isn't just about who has the biggest attack or the strongest power-up. Fighters have to exploit their opponent's weaknesses, adapt their strategy, and take advantage of the environment. That makes every battle feel like a contest of survival rather than a contest of who the plot wants to win. By comparison, I personally found many of Sword Art Online's fights much less engaging. Once Kirito enters the battlefield, I rarely feel much suspense because I expect him to find a way to win. Spectacle only goes so far. If I don't believe the protagonist can lose, the excitement starts to disappear. Killing Bites kept me on edge because I never felt like anyone was completely safe. The violence has consequences, injuries matter, and every fight feels like it could go in either direction. That's what makes the action so satisfying. It's not just cool to look at, it's tense, unpredictable, and emotionally engaging. For me, that's the difference between watching a fight and actually being invested in the outcome. One thing I wasn't expecting from Killing Bites is that it's actually pretty educational. Beneath all the brutal fights and over-the-top action, the series teaches you a surprising amount about the animal kingdom. Since every fighter's abilities are based on a real animal, the anime regularly explains the traits, instincts, and survival strategies that inspired those powers. You'll learn about things like hunting techniques, defensive adaptations, natural weapons, and why certain animals are so successful in the wild. The show often ties these real biological traits directly into the outcome of each battle, making the fights feel more strategic than just two characters throwing increasingly bigger attacks at each other. Even if the action is exaggerated for entertainment, many of the facts the series references are rooted in real animal behavior. It also makes every matchup more interesting because you're not just watching two people fight, you're watching two different survival strategies clash. A fighter modeled after one animal may have a natural advantage over another, while another matchup might come down to intelligence, endurance, or exploiting a specific weakness. That gives the battles an extra layer that I found genuinely fun to watch. Compared to Sword Art Online, I actually came away from Killing Bites feeling like I'd learned something. Sword Art Online mostly taught me how many girls can inexplicably fall in love with one guy wearing a black coat. Killing Bites, on the other hand, taught me real facts about animals while keeping the action exciting. For me, that's a much more interesting way to build a series around combat. As the series loves to remind you, the one with the sharper fangs wins, and if you ask me, that perfectly sums up this comparison. The sharper fangs belong to Killing Bites, not Sword Art Online. Killing Bites has sharper action because every fight feels dangerous. It has sharper characters because they actually have flaws, motivations, and consequences for their decisions. It has sharper writing because it commits to its premise, instead of constantly bending the story to make one overpowered protagonist look cooler. It knows exactly what kind of anime it wants to be, and it doesn't apologize for it. Sword Art Online, on the other hand, had all the potential in the world, but dulled its own fangs. It started with one of the most exciting premises in anime, and gradually sanded away the tension, the uncertainty, and the sense of danger, until very little of that original concept remained. Instead of making me wonder who was going to survive, it usually just made me wonder how Kirito was going to win this time. So if we're going by Killing Bites' own philosophy, the winner isn't even close. The one with the sharper fangs wins, and those fangs belong to Killing Bites.
The anime begins with an explanation about how Japanese zaibatsu conglomerates have held gruesome underground death matches for rich people to gamble on since ancient times. A high school girl named Hitomi Uzaki gets kidnapped by several men in a van. The kidnapping rate in Japan isn't too high. It's about 0.2 cases per 100,000 people, so this is not very common. Hitomi should have been more aware of her surroundings. Hitomi was looking at her phone, so she didn't notice the van pulling up next to her. Kidnappers usually look to abduct people who are distracted since they're easy targets. So Hitomi should have kept her guard up, especially since she was walking alone at night. College student Yuya Nomoto was forced to drive the van. Yuya feels bad and he stops the van. It turns out that Hitomi killed all of the other men who kidnapped her. Hitomi makes Yuya drive to a junkyard. Yuya sees several dead bodies and he runs away. There's an arena and Yuya encounters another man named Yugo Tani. Yuya begs for help and he explains what happened to him. Yugo says that a therianthrope was most likely responsible. They're a new species of humans who've gained animal abilities through gene therapy. Therianthropes have the intellect of humans and the fangs of beasts. Their power far surpasses mankind. Yuya doesn't believe Yugo, but he suddenly transforms into a lion hybrid. Yugo attacks Yuya, but Hitomi saves him in the nick of time. Yuya should have stayed close to Hitomi. If Hitomi was intending to kill Yuya, then she would have done it already, so she's clearly keeping him alive for some reason. Hitomi mentions something about Killing Bites, and that she has to fight Yugo here. Yugo has battled hundreds of times, and this is Hitomi's first match. The odds of her winning are 99-1. Hitomi bets Yuya's organs, since he doesn't have any money on him. Yuya tries to flee, but Hitomi stops him. If Hitomi wins the fight, then Yuya can live. If Hitomi loses, then Yuya dies too. Yuya should stay put and do exactly what Hitomi says. Hitomi already saved Yuya's life earlier, so it goes to show that she'll protect him. Yuya is way more valuable to Hitomi if he's alive, so it's in her best interest that Yuya doesn't die. Yuya isn't sure how Hitomi is supposed to win the fight since she's much smaller than Yugo. Size isn't everything in a fight though. People who are smaller are much quicker and agile, so there are some upsides. Hitomi transforms into a honey badger hybrid. Yugo has never lost a match before, and his nickname is King of Kings. The fight begins, and Yugo seems to have the upper hand. The best way for Hitomi to win the fight against Yugo is to constantly evade his attacks and wait for him to tire out. Since Yugo is a lot bigger and stronger, it'll take more effort for him to move, and therefore, he'll run out of energy faster. Yugo has also evidently skipped leg day at the gym, since his legs are pretty scrawny compared to the upper half of his body. Yugo's skinny legs won't be able to support his massive upper body weight for very long. Yugo doesn't pull any of his punches, and he attempts to scare Hitomi by roaring. The lion's roar is the loudest of all the felines, and it's supposed to intimidate every animal. However, since Hitomi is part honey badger, she doesn't experience any fear. Honey badgers are considered to be the world's most fearless creatures. This fact is even stated in the Guinness Book of World Records. Hitomi kills Yugo with a single slash. If Hitomi was able to kill Yugo so easily, then it doesn't make sense why she was holding back all this time. It's not like Hitomi receives any additional awards if the deathmatch goes on longer, so she should have killed Yugo right away instead of toying with him. The deathmatch was being live streamed, and the people watching are shocked to see that Yugo lost. Honey badgers often fight larger predators like hyenas, leopards, tigers, and lions though, so this isn't anything out of the ordinary. The next morning, Yuya wakes up in his apartment. He thinks that what happened last night was all a dream, but Hitomi is sleeping next to him. There's a flashback. Hitomi is about to kill Yuya, but she gets a call from her guardian, Reiichi Shido. Yuya took Hitomi to his apartment and treated her injuries, then they both fell asleep. Yuya shouldn't have taken Hitomi to his apartment. Now, Hitomi knows where Yuya lives, so he won't be able to escape from her. Yuya should have taken Hitomi to a hospital and let the doctors treat her injuries. Hitomi transformed back into a human, so Yuya could come up with an excuse and say that she was mugged or something. Japan has a low crime rate, but it's not entirely non-existent, so the doctors should believe Yuya. Yuya thanks Hitomi for last night and promises that he won't tell anyone what happened. Yuya takes Hitomi out to a restaurant for some breakfast. Reiichi comes to the restaurant and he introduces himself to Yuya. Reiichi explains that the Japanese economy is supposedly still being controlled by 4 zaibatsus: Mitsukado, Yatsubishi, Sumitomo, and Ishida. Killing Bites is a secret proxy war with each zaibatsu's representation on the line. Reiichi works for a bureau. It's their job to run Killing Bites smoothly. Reiichi has arranged the death of Yuya's friends to look like a car accident. Yuya should make sure not to disobey Reiichi. He could get him killed and make his death look like an accident too. Reiichi assigns Hitomi to be Yuya's bodyguard. Yuya is Hitomi's sole investor since she bet his organs on the fight last night. If something happens to Yuya, then Hitomi can't participate in future Killing Bites. Reiichi gives Yuya a portion of the previous winnings to invest in the next fight. Yuya counts the money and he discovers that it's a total of 100 million yen, which is around 720,000 US dollars. Hitomi takes a temporary leave of absence from school. She'll be living with Yuya from now on. Hitomi orders Yuya to go and buy her some stuff. Hitomi should go with Yuya just in case something happens to him. On the way back from the store, Yuya is attacked by a woman who's a porcupine hybrid. She demands Yuya to tell her everything that he knows about Hitomi, but Hitomi appears out of nowhere to rescue Yuya. Hitomi was actually using Yuya as bait. This is a pretty risky plan. Yuya could have gotten killed if Hitomi didn't show up in time, so it would be much safer if they stuck together from the start. The porcupine woman is named Ryoko Araka, and she has metallic quills. Ryoko planned to kill Yuya after getting the information that she needed about Hitomi, but since Hitomi is here, Ryoko intends to kill her instead. Hitomi and Ryoko fight. Hitomi's skin is really tough, and it can't be pierced by the metallic quills. Honey badgers do have exceptionally thick skin. Their skin is over 6 millimeters thick, which is more than a larger animal like a buffalo. Hitomi has a big advantage in this fight. She doesn't need to dodge Ryoko's attacks since the metallic quills can't pierce her body. It should be an easy victory for Hitomi. Hitomi slashes Ryoko, but it's not enough to kill her. Hitomi is about to deal the finishing blow, but Yuya stops her. He doesn't want Hitomi to murder someone. It's self-defense though, since Ryoko attacked first. If Ryoko is left alive, then she'll probably attack again in the future, so they need to kill her and prevent that from happening. Ryoko recovers, and she's about to attack Hitomi again, but a man appears and he tackles her away. The man kind of looks like a bigger and fatter version of Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. The characters go to Yuya's apartment. The man is a hippopotamus hybrid named Ichinosuke Okujima. He tackled Ryoko away without transforming, so Ichinosuke is pretty strong on his own. Ichinosuke Ichinosuke is a brute for the Ishita Zaibatsu, and he wants Hitomi to join his faction. Hitomi refuses to join, despite the fact that there's strength in numbers. Hitomi gets a text message from Reichi, and she changes her mind. Hitomi agrees to sign up as a temporary hire for the Ishita faction during the next Killing Bites. Ichinosuke stays overnight at Yuya's apartment. Hitomi gets a new uniform. She needs to stick with Yuya, so Hitomi enrolls at the same university that he's attending. Hitomi and Yuya should stay inside and never go out in public to avoid any further dangers. They would be drawing more attention to themselves by attending university, and it's going to put a bigger target on their backs. Hitomi is still in high school, so she won't be able to blend in with the other college-age students very well. Hitomi goes to the bathroom. Hitomi shouldn't leave Yuya's side. She needs to be there to protect Yuya in case another therianthrope attacks him. Hitomi encounters a girl named Erusa Nakanishi. She's from the same faction as Ryoko. Erusa steals Hitomi's underwear and she runs off. Hitomi chases after Erusa, but she's way too fast and Hitomi isn't able to catch up to her. Erusa transforms into a cheetah hybrid. It makes sense why Hitomi wasn't able to catch up to Erusa. Cheetahs are the world's fastest land animal, and they can reach speeds of up to 70 miles per hour. In contrast to that, a honey badger's top speed is only about 19 miles per hour, so it's not even close. Hitomi and Erusa are about to fight each other, but they get interrupted. A man informs them that they can't fight until the next death match, which is being held a week from now. So joining a faction, even temporarily, will give the contestants immunity until the next Killing Bites. This is why joining a faction is a good decision. The participants can use the time to train and get stronger, since they don't need to worry about getting killed. People from other factions are spying on Hitomi, and they want to kill her during the competition. Hitomi shouldn't have shown off her abilities. Now the opponents know what she's capable of. It would be better to keep everything a secret so that they don't know what to expect. Erusa was trying to bait Hitomi, so she shouldn't have fallen for it. Hitomi and Erusa were spotted by the other college students, but they think that they're just cosplayers. Hitomi and Erusa dress up in maid outfits to avoid any further suspicion. They're lucky that all the students at this university are so gullible. The characters shouldn't be using their animal powers in public so that they can avoid these kinds of awkward situations in the future. Students from the photography club take pictures of Hitomi and Erusa in their maid outfits. Hitomi enjoys all the attention that she's getting. Erusa takes Hitomi to a cafe. Yuya should be fine on his own, since none of the other therianthropes will try to kill him until the next Killing Bites is over. Yuya goes back to his apartment. Yugo is there. It turns out that he wasn't killed by Hitomi. Another character named Yoko Mitsukado is at the apartment too. She's the granddaughter of the Mitsukado Zaibatsu's president. Yoko requests Yuya to withdraw from the next death match. Instead of a one-on-one, it'll be a battle royale between multiple brutes. Getting defeated means certain death. If people can withdraw from the death matches whenever they want to, then they don't have to risk their lives fighting. It's not like the characters are forced to participate in this death game. They can quit anytime they choose. The only reason why they would need to fight is for the money, but there are safer ways of earning money. Yoko explains that Reichi is using Killing Bites to test his own research. Yuya doesn't think that Hitomi will withdraw, but Yoko mentions that Yuya will also be entering. The financiers are the ones who will command and move the brutes, so Yuya's decisions will determine whether Hitomi lives or dies. Erusa suggests Hitomi to find a new financier and re-enter the death match later, but Hitomi is fine with Yuya. She knows that Yuya is scared of her, so Hitomi can do everything her way. Yuya doesn't want to withdraw from Killing Bites, since he thinks that Hitomi will kill him. Yugo and Yoko leave Yuya's apartment. Yoko plans to join the death match so that she can defeat Hitomi herself. Hitomi returns to Yuya's apartment. Ichinosuke says that the battle royale requires a 3-man team. They need to recruit another brute to join their group. The Ishida faction doesn't have the necessary assets to secure elite talent, and the deadline for entry is tomorrow. The characters are only able to find a rabbit hybrid named Ui Inaba. Ui lost all of her Killing Bites matches, and she recommends that the characters find someone else to join the team. Unfortunately, there's not enough time to look for other people, so Ichinosuke is desperate, and he begs Ui to join the team. Ui doesn't want to do it though, since she might die. Hitomi tries to get Ui to join the team, but she flees. Hitomi orders Yuya to go and convince Ui to join the team. Yuya asks Ui why she became a therianthrope in the first place. Ui responds that she never had any redeeming qualities about her. She was slow, clumsy, bad at sports and school. After becoming a therianthrope, Ui discovered that that she was only good at running away. It doesn't make sense why the scientists are combining humans with animals that can't fight. The whole point of giving people these animal powers is so that they battle each other and rich people can gamble on the outcomes. It's uncertain if the humans are able to choose which animals they want to become hybrids of. If so, then an animal such as a pistol shrimp would be a much better option. The characters in the movie Project Power also had abilities based on animals. The main character had the abilities of a pistol shrimp. It's considered to be the most powerful animal on the planet. The pistol shrimp can vaporize water around it to 8,000 degrees, which is hotter than the surface of the sun. It can create shockwaves that rip flesh right off the bone. Yuya tries to motivate Ui. He tells her that being weak doesn't equal being meaningless, and even the weak can contribute in some way. Unfortunately, rabbits aren't great fighters. They don't stand much of a chance against predators. A rabbit's main method of defense is to run away and hide as quickly as possible. A horned lizard hybrid named Akemi Kishimoto comes and she attacks Ui. Akemi can shoot blood from her eyes like bullets. Ui flees, but Akemi somehow catches up to her. This shouldn't be possible since Ui is supposed to be much faster. Hitomi comes in the nick of time to save Ui. Akemi shoots blood at Hitomi, but her thick pelt is able to block the bullets with ease. Hitomi has the advantage. She can just wait since Akemi would eventually run out of blood to shoot from her eyes. Ui uses her hearing to find out that Akemi has a twin sister. Hitomi defeats Akemi and her twin sister. If Ui was paying attention earlier, then she should have noticed much sooner that Akemi had a twin sister. Akemi was shooting blood out of her right eye, and this other person is shooting blood out of her left eye, so they aren't the same person. There's also no possible way that Akemi could have caught up to Ui, since rabbits can run much faster than horned lizards, so something was clearly wrong. Hitomi made sure not to kill Akemi and her twin sister so that she wouldn't break any of the rules. So, contestants participating in killing bites are still allowed to injure other therianthropes. As long as they don't outright kill them, they won't be violating any of the rules. The characters could play dirty and hurt their opponents beforehand so that they'll be crippled and won't be able to fight very well during the battle royale. Hitomi orders Akemi to tell other people that Ui was the one who defeated her and her twin sister. This is the first time that Ui has won a fight, and she finally decides to join the team. The killing bites is about to begin. Lots of rich people are gathered here. Yugo is there as well, but he won't be participating in this death match since he's recovering from his injuries. Hitomi doesn't even remember who Yugo is. The characters meet a tiger hybrid named Taiga Nakanishi. He's the winner of the previous killing bites and Eruza's older brother. Eruza intends to kill Hitomi herself. A member of the killing bites bureau named Mai Shinozaki will serve as the master of the ceremonies for this tournament. Reichi comes to explain all of the basic rules. There are a total of 4 three-man teams. Each one of them represents a different faction, and they'll fight to the death in a survival match. The death game will take place on an uninhabited island called Hawaii Island in the Philippine Sea. The characters are all on a cruise ship headed towards the island. A game grid has been superimposed over Hawaii Island. There are 100-meter quadrants, and the brutes will be placed in one of the quadrants. The players will move the brutes around the map like pieces on a chessboard. When brutes of opposing teams enter the same square, a battle will commence. As long as they're in the same square, it doesn't matter if it's a 2-on-1 or a 3-on-3, the battle will still be carried out. The sole condition for winning killing bites is that all of the other team's brutes are either dead or incapacitated. So in a typical battle royale fashion, the last ones standing are the winners. The best strategy is to avoid confrontation. Let everyone else kill each other, and don't fight anyone unless you absolutely have to. It's possible to win without needing to kill anyone if the other contestants all kill each other. The players should do their best to move their brutes far away from the enemy brutes. The brutes disembark the ship and go to their starting points on the island. It's nighttime, so the brutes who can see in the dark will have a big advantage. Animals such as cats, owls, alligators, raccoons, foxes, frogs, and bats can see in the dark. If there are any of these hybrids, then the characters should watch out for them. The brutes have to wear a collar so that the player can relay their orders to them. They aren't able to take the collar off. Failing to follow orders will trigger an alarm, and repeatedly disobeying orders will cause the collar to explode. The players roll a dice to see how many quadrants their brutes will move. The players need to be careful and not move their brutes haphazardly, since it might lead them through cliffs or rivers. The characters were allowed to look over the island before the game began, so Yuya should have done that instead of going in blind. The players should try to move their brutes to elevated terrain so it gives them the high ground. This can be useful in combat since since it allows the brutes to have a wider field of view and a vantage point. The other players make fun of Yuya since he's very inexperienced. Yuya should act more confidently. You've probably heard the phrase, fake it till you make it. It's Yuya's turn, and he rolls a 6. Yuya moves Hitomi to the most ideal quadrant on the map. It's revealed that Hitomi and Yuya planned ahead. Hitomi gave Yuya hand signals, and he watched her on the monitor so that he would know where to move her. This is a pretty clever tactic. It shows that cheating is allowed as long as it doesn't break any of the pre-established rules. Ichinosuke and Ui should have done the same preparation as Hitomi so that Yuya would know where to move them too. Honey badgers are apt at moving through unknown territories in the dark. The other players start taking Yuya seriously, and they see him as a legitimate threat. A bear hybrid named Jerome Hongo comes to challenge Hitomi. Jerome is part of the Mitsukado Zaibatsu. They fight, and Hitomi easily incapacitates Jerome in a single slash. The players are shocked to see what happened. They should avoid Hitomi at all costs. If she can defeat a lion and a bear in a single slash, then it'll be very difficult to beat her. Hitomi was able to predict Jerome's attacks since they confronted each other earlier. Jerome is eliminated from the death game. In the meantime, Ichinosuke gets attacked by Taiga. Ichinosuke transforms. He teams up with a gorilla hybrid named Shota Yabe and a crocodile hybrid named Ryuji Shiina to take Taiga down. Only one team can win the battle royale in the end though, so the characters will have to turn on one another sooner or later. Ryuji transforms. He tells Ichinosuke and Shota to stay out of this. Ryuji fights Taiga alone, but Shota transforms and he interferes. Taiga knocks Shota out when he's distracted. Afterwards, Taiga incapacitates Ryuji. If Ichinosuke, Shota, and Ryuji were going to team up against Taiga, then they should have worked as a group instead of taking turns to fight. This is another reason why you shouldn't team up with people in a battle royale. You can't rely on anyone but yourself and your own faction members. Taiga had the terrain advantage since they're fighting him in a jungle, so the other characters shouldn't have underestimated him. Eruta comes across a gecko hybrid named Kaede Kazuma and a cobra hybrid named Den Onuma. There are no cameras in this unmonitored area. It doesn't make sense why that's the case though. The whole point of this deathmatch is for rich people to watch and gamble on the outcomes. They can't watch if there are no cameras. Den restrains Eruza. Den throws Eruza to the ground and he breaks her arm. Eruza is at a significant disadvantage since it's a 2-on-1. Eruza's player should move her away from this area as soon as possible. There are no cameras, but the brutes should show up on the map so the players can see that Eruza is outnumbered. Taiga is about to fight Ichinosuke, but his player moves him to another quadrant to save Eruza. A hippo should actually win a fight against a tiger most of the time. Hippos are much bigger and stronger than tigers. Ryuji regains consciousness. He bites Taiga's leg. Taiga is immobilized and he can't move. Taiga should have finished Ryuji off instead of leaving him alive. This is a death game, so it's either kill or be killed. Taiga's collar will explode if he doesn't move, since he's disobeying an order. This is a clever plan. Ryuji is purposefully preventing Taiga from moving so that his collar will explode and kill him. Elsewhere on the island, Ui digs a burrow alone. Taiga is unable to escape Ryuji's jaws. Taiga should try to poke out Ryuji's eyes. Yuya orders Hitomi to move to the same quadrant as Eruza and rescue her. This is a bad decision. Yuya shouldn't try to save the enemy and risk Hitomi's life. This is a battle royale, so if Eruza died, there would be one less opponent to worry about, and it would increase the chances of his own faction winning the death game. Hitomi had to give up her ideal position, so she'll be at a disadvantage now. The other players rightfully criticize Yuya for making a stupid move. A crew is dispatched to the unmonitored area so that they can set up a bunch of cameras and broadcast what's happening. Hitomi is having a lot of trouble fighting against Kaede. Once Kaede's sticky hands have caught someone, there's no escaping her grip. In that case, Hitomi should avoid getting caught by Kaede. Hitomi could simply slice Kaede's arms off. Eruza slashes Den's face when he gets distracted. Hitomi and Eruza team up to fight Den and Kaede. Now it's a 2-on-2. Den fully transforms into a cobra. Den will fight Hitomi while Kaede will fight Eruza. A flashback scene reveals that the Sumitomo Zaibatsu executive sent Den and Kaede to compete in the battle royale to defeat Reichi and his pawns. In past Killing Bites, there were stricter regulations. If the people had any prior issues, they weren't allowed to become brutes. However, it changed 5 years ago when Reichi became the director general. He decided to relax the regulations and let anyone, including heinous criminals, to become brutes and compete in Killing Bites. Hitomi should be able to easily win the fight against Den. A honey badger has the ability to resist snake venom. Moreover, snake fangs shouldn't be able to pierce a honey badger's thick skin. Eruza's right arm is broken, so she has a huge handicap. Taiga is unable to escape Ryuji's jaws since crocodiles have the strongest bite in the animal kingdom. Once they bite something, they never let go. Taiga coils himself around Ryuji so that if his collar explodes, it'll also kill him. There are 10 seconds left until Taiga's collar explodes. Ichinosuke tackles Taiga and Ryuji apart. Taiga is set free, and he rushes to save Eruza. Ichinosuke shouldn't have interfered. He could have done nothing. If Taiga and Ryuji were killed, then that would be 2 less enemies to deal with. This is a battle royale, so Ichinosuke shouldn't be helping or saving his opponents. It's not like they can all win together since they're on different teams. Den restrains Hitomi, but she breaks free. Ryuji is angry about Taiga escaping, and he vows to kill Ichinosuke. This is another reason why Ichinosuke shouldn't have done anything. Now he made another enemy. Crocodiles have powerful regenerative abilities, and Ryuji's wound has already completely healed. A hippo should be able to beat a crocodile in a fight, since they're much bigger and stronger. Ui is digging a tunnel, so it seems like the brutes can move underground on their own without following the player's orders. Hitomi attacks Den's right side since he lost his right eye earlier. However, cobras don't have any blind spots because they can use their tongues to convert olfactory information into visual information. In other words, Den can track Hitomi's body heat. Den can still see Hitomi clearly if he lost both of his eyes. If this is the case, then Hitomi should lower her body heat. She can cover herself in cold mud, like the characters do in the Predator movies. Hitomi could also slice off Den's tongue so he can't use it to see anymore. Hitomi accidentally breathes in Den's venom, and she gets paralyzed. Kaede fully transforms into a gecko. She's able to stick to any surface with just her tail. Hitomi overcomes her paralysis, and she cuts Den in half. Honey badgers have excellent resistance against cobra venom. Even if they're completely incapacitated, they can fully recover and be ready to fight again. Eruza wasn't hurt by Kaede's slow attacks, since cheetahs are able to react much faster than geckos. Hitomi helps Eruza fight against Kaede. They should be able to beat her. Ichinosuke is still fighting Ryuji, and he's about to lose. It doesn't make sense why Ichinosuke is so weak. Hippos typically weigh 3,000 to 4,000 pounds, and crocodiles typically weigh 300 to 2,000 pounds. A man named Takeshi Kido comes to interrupt the fight. He was sent by Yoko. Takeshi is a teammate of Shota, who's revealed to be alive. Shota managed to move out of the way, so Taiga failed to kill Ryuji and Shota. If Ichinosuke, Ryuji, and Shota worked together from the start instead of arguing with one another, then they most likely would have defeated Taiga. Takeshi hates how Ryuji destroyed several trees. Ryuji attacks Takeshi with his tail, but he easily deflects it. Takeshi kills Ryuji in a single punch without even transforming. Takeshi must be related to Saitama because crocodiles have extremely tough skin. A normal human shouldn't be able to punch a hole in a crocodile's head. Takeshi then continues to beat Ryuji's corpse into a bloody pulp. The players are all watching, so they should move their brutes far away from Takeshi. He is going to be an extremely tough opponent to fight. Shota is about to attack Ichinosuke, but he disappears. Kaede is ordered to move to a different area. Hitomi and Eruza should restrain Kaede. If she can't move, then her collar will explode and kill her. Hitomi and Eruza fight each other. Ichinosuke fell into one of the tunnels that Ui dug. Ichinosuke is injured and he can't move. Ichinosuke plans to keep himself hidden and try to regroup with the others later. Ichinosuke shouldn't stay out in the open. Since he's a hippo, he could sleep underwater. Ui climbs up the tunnel and Shota sees her. Ichinosuke could have warned Ui to not climb up the tunnel. Ui should go back the way that she came. Shota is partially transformed right now, so he won't fit inside the hole with those massive arms. Hitomi and Eruza are still fighting each other. Eruza pins Hitomi to the ground like when they first met. Instead of killing her, Hitomi and Eruza start kissing each other. They were both drugged by a civet hybrid named Kaori Ikujo. She can produce a pheromone that acts as an aphrodisiac. The brutes can wear whatever clothing they want during this death game. They should have worn a gas mask to prevent breathing in toxic fumes. It also doesn't make sense why Kaori is drugging her own teammate since Eruza is part of her group. Yoko is very upset because she thinks that what Hitomi and Eruza are doing defiles killing bites. Kaede runs into Taiga. Kaede is about to transform, but Taiga kills her. The other characters should kill their enemies too before they have the chance to transform. The Sumitomo faction is eliminated from the death game since all 3 of their members are either dead or incapacitated. Hitomi and Eruza are still under the influence of the pheromone. Yoko wants to defeat Reichi and beat his hybrids so that her grandfather will stop watching killing bites and go back to the kind person that he used to be. Hitomi is able to snap out of it by focusing on her memories of Reichi. Hitomi attacks Kaori, but Taiga comes. The 4 Zaibatsu presidents talk about legalizing theriomorphosis surgery. They want to make killing bites, and into a legal business. Veiichi's bureau is in charge of gene development, so they manage all the technology and facilities that are necessary to produce a therianthrope. It's no secret that Veiichi and his bureau have all the power and influence. Taiga snaps Eruza out of it. Hitomi is outnumbered 3-1. Yuya made a mistake by ordering Hitomi to help Eruza. Hitomi fights Taiga, while Eruza and Kaori stand nearby. Eruza and Kaori aren't assisting Taiga since they would get in his way. This is a good decision, since tigers are usually solitary predators and they hunt alone. Taiga evades all of Hitomi's slashes, and he knows that her victory over Yugo was a total fluke. Ui is still fleeing from Shota. Ui should be careful not to leave the quadrant, or else she would break the rules and her collar will explode. Luckily, Ui is much faster, so Shota can't catch up to her. Ui doesn't have many options. As explained before, rabbits aren't great fighters. Shota damages several trees to trap Ui and prevent her from escaping into a tunnel. Shota is about to kill Ui, but Takeshi comes. He's angry about Shota destroying the trees. Shota knows that he won't be able to talk Takeshi down, so he punches him in the face. However, Takeshi doesn't flinch. Shota hits Takeshi with several more trees, but again, he doesn't flinch at all. Shota attacks Takeshi, but he tears him in half. Even though Shota was Takeshi's teammate, he didn't hesitate to kill him. Takeshi is clearly the most dangerous contestant. If he kills his own team members just because they made him mad, then there's no telling what he'll do to the enemy. It's Shota's own fault that he died. If Shota is aware that Takeshi hates people who destroy nature, then he should have known better. The characters could use Takeshi as a weapon. They should trick the other contestants into wrecking the trees, and then Takeshi would get enraged and kill them. Takeshi lets Ui live, and he goes to another quadrant, so Takeshi isn't hostile towards people who don't do anything. Ui is fortunate that Takeshi's player moved him somewhere else. Ui goes to help Hitomi, then attempts to interfere with the Hitomi versus Taiga fight, but Hitomi tells the camera crew to get him out of here and sew him up. Hitomi doesn't care if the brutes come after her again. She'll kill them. Taiga informs Hitomi that Yugo spared her life during their fight. Lions don't fight the weak, so Yugo went easy on Hitomi. It's highly unlikely that Yugo let Hitomi win. People were betting millions on the outcome of the deathmatch, so Yugo losing not only cost them a lot of money, but it also ruined his reputation since people think that he was defeated by Hitomi. Yugo said that he never holds anything back when he's fighting. There was nothing for Yugo to gain by letting Hitomi win. Taiga will never acknowledge Hitomi's victory over Yugo. Taiga wants to be the one to defeat Yugo. Taiga attacks Hitomi's blind spot, and he sends her flying. Hitomi mostly parried the attack though, so she's able to stand. Hitomi and Taiga plan to fight to the death. Yuya remembers how his life was empty and boring before meeting Hitomi. Yeah, that's true, but at least Yuya wasn't constantly in danger. Taiga hits Hitomi several times, and she waits for the right opportunity to counterattack. Hitomi is purposefully taking Taiga's attacks so that she can measure the range required for her counterattack. Taiga realizes that he underestimated Hitomi too much. Instead of fighting, Yuya should move Hitomi to another quadrant. A honey badger will most likely lose a fight against a tiger since they're not as strong. It's best to avoid this battle entirely. Even if Hitomi somehow defeated Taiga, then she would have to deal with Eruza and Kaori. Hitomi probably wouldn't be able to win the fight against them since she would be tired and injured after fighting Taiga. Ui suddenly arrives. She's here to warn Hitomi about Takeshi. Ui notices Taiga behind her and she flees in terror. However, Ui breathes in Kaori's pheromone and she collapses. Rabbits have an excellent sense of smell. It's up to 20 times better than a human, so Ui should have avoided breathing in the pheromone. Kaori forces Ui to watch the Hitomi versus Taiga fight. Yugo is the only one who's ever withstood Taiga's attack twice. Taiga transforms even further, and he plans to kill Hitomi with his next blow. Hitomi could slash Taiga before he fully transforms. The other players scold Yuya since his foolish actions are going to lead to Hitomi's death. Yuya feels guilty, and Yoko tells him to move Hitomi away. However, Yuya trusts Hitomi, and he chooses to let her stay where she is. This is a bad decision. Yuya should have moved Hitomi away while he had the chance. Now, Yuya has to wait until his next turn to do something. Yuya wants to make a stand instead of running away. Yuya's intentions are noble, but if Hitomi dies, then he'll be responsible. Yuya probably won't be able to live with that on his conscience. Hitomi continues to fight Taiga. However, Takeshi comes and he uses his tail to bash Hitomi away. Yoko wanted to take down Taiga and Hitomi together. She manipulated Yuya into keeping Hitomi in the same area so that Takeshi would come to kill her and Taiga. There aren't any trees here, so Takeshi is able to release his power floor. Yuya played right into Yoko's hand. This is why Yuya should have moved Hitomi to another quadrant. Yuya is way too gullible and naive. He needs to make his own decisions instead of letting other people influence him. A flashback scene reveals that Yoko manipulated Takashi into hating Hitomi so that he would kill her. Back in the present, Takashi hits Hitomi with his tail again. Ui hasn't fully come back to her senses, but she tricks Kaori into stepping in a pitfall trap. Ui jumps on Kaori and she sends her into the tunnel. Ui then covers the hole so that Kaori can't climb back out. It looks like Ui was useful after all. That's at least one less opponent. Hitomi tries to fight back against Takashi, but she isn't able to cut his armored skin. Takashi is about to kill Hitomi, but Taiga surprise attacks him. Taiga is angry about Takashi stealing his prey. Taiga slashes Takashi, but he's also unable to cut his skin. Takashi fully transforms, and he's revealed to be a pangolin hybrid. Now it makes sense why Takashi is so powerful. Pangolins are covered in hard scales, and their tails are strong enough to support their entire body weight. Taiga should have killed Takashi before he fully transformed. This is not going to be an easy fight. Pangolins have poor vision, so Taiga can use his speed and attack Takashi's blind spot. Hitomi is rendered unconscious. Takashi's scales can be used as weapons, so this means that his whole body is a lethal weapon since it's covered in scales. Taiga knocks Takashi on his back. He tries to attack his abdomen, but Takashi curls up into a ball. Takashi is invincible in this state. Nothing in the natural world can break a pangolin's defense, so Taiga won't be able to harm Takashi. The best option is for Taiga's player to move him to somewhere else and avoid this fight altogether. Or Taiga could try to kick Takashi to a different area so that his collar explodes and kills him. Pangolins aren't too heavy. The biggest species weighs about 73 pounds, while the smaller species weigh about 3 to 10 pounds. Takashi opens up his defense a bit, and Taiga tries to claw at him. However, it was a trap, and Takashi manages to cut Taiga's right arm off. Taiga is hurt, but he won't stop fighting even if it kills him. Ichinosuke comes and he tackles Takashi away. Ichinosuke is injured, but he's able to hold Takashi down. Taiga claws out Takashi's right eye. Instead of standing there and doing nothing, Eruza could have helped and clawed out Takashi's left eye. Then he would be completely blind. Takashi impales Ichinosuke and Taiga with his tail. They're both incapacitated. Yoko is confident that her faction will win. Takashi is about to kill Hitomi, but Eruza says he'll have to kill her first. Ui tries to dig a tunnel so that she and Hitomi can escape, but Hitomi regains consciousness. Hitomi further transforms into her true honey badger form. Daiichi explains that Hitomi wasn't genetically modified to forcibly achieve theriomorphosis. She was naturally born with a theriomorphosis DNA, so Hitomi is an origin beast, which is the perfect fusion between human and beast. It hasn't just affected Hitomi's body, her mind and instincts have been affected as well. There's a flashback scene to 7 years ago in Hong Kong. Daiichi found Hitomi when she was a little girl. At that time, Hitomi was a mindless animal without any thought or language. Daiichi befriended Hitomi, and he was able to eventually gain her trust over time. Hitomi injured Daiichi a lot, but he never gave up on her. Daiichi is the one who gave Hitomi her name. Hitomi learned how to talk as well. Daiichi's co-worker, Shibayama, shot Hitomi with a tranquilizer, and she fell into an area controlled by the mafia. Daiichi and Shibayama went to rescue Hitomi, but they were greatly outnumbered by the mafia members. Daiichi used his own body as a shield to protect Hitomi. Mai came to save them. Hitomi went with Reiichi, and she developed feelings for him. Back in the present, Hitomi attacks Takashi again. Her speed and strength have both dramatically increased. Yoko is embarrassed because she already declared herself as the winner. Hitomi tips over a light, and Takashi knocks it away from the trees. Hitomi manages to evade all of Takashi's attacks. Hitomi slashes Takashi's chest, and he goes back to being on the defense. Hitomi won't be able to hurt Takashi in this form. Hitomi kicks Takashi into the forest, and this destroys several trees. Takashi is sad to see what happened. A flashback scene shows that Takashi associates plants with his mother who passed away. Takashi killed his abusive alcoholic father. Back in the present, Takashi severs Hitomi's right arm. Hitomi should have been paying more attention to Takashi. She could have dodged the attack if she wasn't absent-minded. Takashi forces the scales around his body outwards, and they become like giant knives. Takashi attacks Hitomi without any consideration for the trees. Takashi is both physically and psychologically impenetrable. Takashi uses his tail to impale Hitomi. It looks like Hitomi has died, died, but it's just a trick. Hitomi throws her severed arm at Takashi to distract him. Hitomi smiles, and this reminds Takashi of his mother. Hitomi sticks her left arm down Takashi's throat. She shatters Takashi's skull and destroys his brain. Honey badgers only turn more vicious when their limbs are torn off and their guts are spilling out. They won't stop fighting until their dying breath. Eriza is watching, and she admits that Hitomi is a much better fighter than her. Yoko is devastated about losing, and she can't believe what happened. Hitomi has used up all of her energy, and she collapses. It turns out that Takashi is alive, and he gets up. Eriza slashes Takashi's throat, and she finally manages to kill him. Yoko is shocked to see what happened, and she passes out. Eriza decides to spare Hitomi's life, since she's already incapacitated. Since Eriza is the only one left who's able to move, she's declared the winner of this killing bites. However, Ui wakes up after hitting her head against the wall and blacking out. So the death game isn't over yet. Eriza is about to kill Ui, so she runs away. Ui should have continued to pretend being unconscious. She would have lost the killing bites, but at least she would be alive since Eriza wouldn't have bothered to go after her. Eriza is too fast, and she catches up to Ui. This makes sense since cheetahs are able to run much faster than rabbits. Ui doesn't want to fight, so she continues running. Ui accidentally lands a somersault kick on Eriza, and she knocks her unconscious. This means that Ui is the killing bites champion. Ui got really lucky. A rabbit shouldn't be able to defeat a cheetah under normal circumstances. This scene further proves why hiding and waiting is the best strategy. Ui had to defeat one other opponent to win in the end. She didn't have to fight any of the tougher enemies like Takashi and Taiga either. Hitomi kept saying how the one with the sharper fangs wins killing bites, and yet Ui doesn't have any fangs, so her statement is wrong. The Ishida Zaibatsu ultimately wins the battle royale, and they gain authority. The presidents of the different factions argue with each other. The bureau conspired with Yatsubishi and Ishida during the tournament so they would get better board positions and die rolls. The power suddenly goes out. Cruise ships should have emergency generators that have their own fuel supply, so this problem should take care of itself shortly. A group of chameleon hybrids have infiltrated the island. They've killed the entire camera crew and intend to eliminate the remaining brutes so that there are no winners. The organization needs some better security. They could have created their own arena like in the Hunger Games so that they could control everything. Ui stops Hitomi's bleeding. Ui doesn't understand why the crew isn't helping the injured brutes since the competition is over. The chameleon hybrids attack Ui, but she's able to dodge the first shot by sound alone. The chameleons use their tongues to strike. Chameleons are able to flick their tongues at speeds of nearly 90 kilometers per hour. It takes 0.01 seconds for their tongues to reach top speed, and a chameleon's tongue is the fastest projectile in the animal world. The chameleons are about to kill Ui, but Hitomi regains consciousness. Even though Hitomi is on the verge of death, she's still able to defeat a few chameleons before collapsing again. Mai comes, and she kills the remaining chameleons. Mai is recording, and she interviews Ui about her victory. The chameleons were assassins sent by the Sumitomo faction since they're mad about losing and want to nullify the results for this killing bites. The chairman of the Sumitomo faction admits that he's at fault. Yugo comes, and he kills him. It's revealed that the Mitsukado Zaibatsu used killing bites to appropriate the Japanese economy over the centuries, which led to their recent stagnation. They prevented theriomorphous technology from being perfected and released to the public. The Mitsukado Zaibatsu prioritized profits over bettering society and the rest of humanity. Yugo kills the Mitsukado chairman, who's Yoko's grandfather. Yoko discovers her grandfather's dead body. Reichi tells Yoko that he died of a sudden heart failure moments ago. However, Yoko knows better, and she can clearly see that her grandfather didn't die a natural death. The Killing Bites Bureau, Yatsubishi Zaibatsu, Ishida Zaibatsu, and the anti-chairman faction within the Mitsukado Zaibatsu have all band together for a coup d'etat. Yoko orders Yugo to kill all of them, but he only serves himself. Yugo gets revenge on Yoko for treating therianthropes badly all this time. Yugo makes Yoko his slave. There's not much Yoko can do in this situation. Yugo could easily kill her, so she has to stay quiet and do exactly what he says. Yuya returns to college, and he goes back to his normal life. It's almost been 2 weeks since Killing Bites ended. Yuya hasn't been able to reach Hitomi or the others since then, and he misses her a lot. Yuya won 300 million yen in total. That's nearly 2.2 million US dollars. Yuya suddenly receives a text message from Hitomi. She tells him to hurry and come to the place place where she fought Yugo at the start of the series. Yuya goes there and he meets Hitomi. Her right arm has been reattached to her body, and it's healing. Yuya thanks Hitomi for everything, and he almost confesses his love to her. Yuya understands what Hitomi meant when she said that the one with the sharper fangs wins. It's the strong will to never run from a decision that determines who wins and who loses. In other words, fangs represent the will to fight. Hitomi thanks Yuya for everything, and then she kills him. Reichi told Hitomi to kill Yuya since his existence will be a problem for them in the future. This episode alone has enough content for WatchMojo to make another top 10 anime betrayals video. Yuya should have been more careful. Now that Killing Bites is over, Yuya is no longer useful to Hitomi. She can simply find a new investor with all the money they earned. It makes sense where the junkyard is filled with dead bodies. These people were probably former investors too. Hitomi is genuinely sad about killing Yuya, and she starts crying. There's a time skip, and it's the near future. Therianthropes have become fully accepted into society, and there's a special district established for them on an artificial island built on Tokyo Bay. So it's pretty similar to Zootopia. This district is the main host of the International Killing Bites event, and there's a large stadium located in the center. Finally, the anime ends with a reveal of how Yuya is still alive. Yuya wants to get revenge on Hitomi, and he sends some young female therianthropes to compete in Killing Bites. It's unclear how Yuya survived getting killed by Hitomi. Killing Bites received mostly positive reviews from critics and audiences. There are currently 18 volumes for the Killing Bites manga, so there's plenty of source material left to adapt, but a season 2 of the Killing Bites anime hasn't been confirmed yet. A video game adaptation of Killing Bites was announced for the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation Vita in 2015. It was going to be a multiplayer fighting game about the Killing Bites tournament. However, the game was delayed to 2016 and cancelled altogether in 2017. What did you think of Killing Bites? Also, which movie or anime should I do next? Leave a suggestion. Check out some of the other videos on this channel. Well, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a future upload. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
As you can see, I think Killing Bites is miles better than Sword Art Online. It's fun, it's exciting, it's unpredictable, and most importantly, it actually keeps me invested. Every fight feels dangerous because it never seems like victory is guaranteed. The characters have distinct personalities, the action is brutal, and the series fully commits to its ridiculous premise instead of pretending to be something it's not. Sword Art Online, on the other hand, constantly took me out of the experience. Instead of wondering who was going to win, I was usually wondering how Kirito was going to effortlessly win this time. The tension disappears when the outcome feels predetermined, and that's one of the biggest reasons I found Killing Bites so much more entertaining. It actually made me care about the fights instead of just waiting for the inevitable. If you're looking for another survival-focused movie after this, I'd recommend checking out Apex starring Bruce Willis. While it's not exactly the same as Killing Bites, it scratches a similar itch with its high-stakes hunt, dangerous opponents, and survival-driven premise. The story follows a man who becomes the target of an elite group of hunters, forcing him to outsmart and outlast them in a deadly game where only one side is expected to survive. If you enjoy stories built around deadly competitions, constant tension, and characters fighting to stay alive against overwhelming odds, Apex is another title that's worth checking out. It approaches the concept from a sci-fi action perspective rather than anime, but it still delivers that survive-at-all-costs atmosphere that makes these kinds of stories so entertaining. If you're a fan of death game stories, I'd also highly recommend checking out the Battle Royale movies. Long before survival games became one of the biggest trends in anime, manga, and gaming, Battle Royale was already doing it. The premise is simple, brutal, and incredibly effective, throwing a group of students into a fight where only one person can survive. It delivers the kind of constant tension, psychological conflict, and unpredictable eliminations that make the death game genre so entertaining. Battle Royale is one of the most influential entries in the genre, and still holds up remarkably well. If you've somehow never seen it, you're missing one of the defining death game stories that inspired countless series that came after it. I'd also highly recommend the Hunger Games movies if you're looking for another excellent death game series. They take the survival formula and combine it with strong world building, memorable characters, and genuine emotional stakes. Every competition feels dangerous because it never seems like anyone is completely safe, and the series does a great job showing how the games affect the contestants both physically and mentally. What I especially like is that the Hunger Games isn't just about the action. It also explores propaganda, power, survival, and the human cost of forcing people into these deadly competitions. The action scenes are intense, the suspense is consistently high, and the characters have believable motivations that make you care about what happens to them. If you're a fan of death game stories, The Hunger Games is an easy recommendation. It delivers exciting survival action while also telling a compelling story with characters that grow throughout the series. It's one of the strongest and most influential entries in the genre, and absolutely worth watching if you haven't seen it already. If you're a fan of death game stories, you should also check out Squid Game. It's one of the best modern takes on the genre because it perfectly balances suspense, psychological tension, and memorable characters. Every game feels genuinely dangerous, and the series constantly keeps you guessing about who will survive. Unlike a lot of survival stories where the outcome can feel predictable, Squid Game does an excellent job making almost every round feel like anyone could be eliminated. What really elevates the series is that the games themselves aren't the only source of tension. The relationships between the contestants, the moral dilemmas they face, and the desperation that drives their decisions make every episode engaging. The simple childhood games become terrifying because of the life or death stakes attached to them, creating some incredibly memorable moments. The production quality is also outstanding. The set design, music, cinematography, and performances all work together to create a unique atmosphere that's instantly recognizable. Whether you're watching for the suspense, the characters, or the social commentary, Squid Game delivers on all fronts. If you enjoy death game stories, it's one of the easiest recommendations I can make and absolutely deserves the attention it's received. If you're looking for another fantastic death game series, I can't recommend Alice in Borderland enough. It takes the survival game formula and adds clever, high-stakes challenges that test far more than physical strength. Every game forces the characters to rely on strategy, teamwork, intelligence, or psychology, making each episode feel fresh and unpredictable. You never know what kind of challenge is coming next or who will make it out alive. One of the series' biggest strengths is its characters. As the story progresses, you learn what motivates them, what they're willing to sacrifice, and how the brutal games change them over time. The emotional moments hit hard because the show takes the time to make you care about the people fighting to survive. The production quality is also excellent. The abandoned version of Tokyo creates an eerie atmosphere that constantly reminds you something is deeply wrong, and the action sequences are both intense and creative. Combined with strong performances, great pacing, and some genuinely shocking twists, Alice in Borderland stands out as one of the best live-action death game series ever made. If you're a fan of survival stories, this is an absolute must-watch. I'd also recommend Ready or Not. Instead of dozens of contestants, the movie focuses on one woman who's forced to survive a deadly game of hide-and-seek after marrying into a wealthy and deeply twisted family. It's a simple premise, but it's executed incredibly well, with plenty of suspense, dark comedy, and creative action. One of the movie's biggest strengths is its pacing. It gets to the point quickly and rarely slows down, constantly throwing new obstacles and surprises at the main character as she desperately tries to stay alive. The mix of horror, tension, and humor keeps the movie entertaining from beginning to end without taking itself too seriously. If you enjoy survival stories where an ordinary person has to outsmart overwhelming odds, Ready or Not is absolutely worth watching. It's one of the most entertaining horror thrillers in recent years, and with a sequel on the way, it's a great time to check out the original if you haven't already. If you're a fan of death game stories, I'd also recommend the escape room movies. They combine the survival genre with elaborate puzzle rooms, where every challenge is designed to kill the contestants if they can't solve it in time. Instead of relying purely on action, the movies keep the tension high by forcing the characters to think their way out of increasingly dangerous situations, making every room feel like its own unique death trap. One of the best parts of the series is how creative the rooms are. Each one has its own theme, hidden clues, and deadly mechanics that constantly keep both the characters and the audience guessing. You never know what kind of challenge is coming next, and that unpredictability makes the movies consistently entertaining. The escape room films are fast-paced, suspenseful, and full of clever set pieces that make them stand out from more traditional survival movies. If you enjoy seeing characters solve life-or-death puzzles under extreme pressure, these movies are definitely worth checking out. They deliver plenty of tension, memorable challenges, and enough twists to keep you invested until the very end. If you're a fan of psychological death game stories, you should definitely check out the Cube movies. They're among the earliest films to popularize the concept of strangers trapped in a deadly game where intelligence, teamwork, and problem-solving are the only ways to survive. Instead of focusing on action, the series creates tension through its mysterious setting, deadly traps, and the constant uncertainty of who can actually be trusted. What makes the Cube movies stand out is their simplicity. Most of the story takes place inside a giant maze made up of interconnected cube-shaped rooms, yet the filmmakers managed to create an incredible sense of suspense with very little. Every new room could contain a deadly trap, and every decision the characters make could be their last. That constant feeling of uncertainty keeps the tension high from beginning to end. The movies also spend a lot of time exploring the personalities of the people trapped inside the maze. As fear and desperation take over, alliances form, arguments break out, and survival becomes just as much about human psychology as it is about avoiding the traps themselves. If you enjoy survival stories that make you think as much as they keep you on edge, the Cube movies are absolutely worth watching. They're considered classics of the death game genre and have influenced countless survival films and series that came after them.